You're going to die, not as a distant abstraction, but as a certainty that will someday arrive. And yet, if you're like most people, you live every day as though you have infinite time remaining. You postpone conversations that matter. You delay the work you genuinely care about. You stay in situations that drain your spirit. Why? Because we act as if death is something that happens to other people, not us. Today, we're exploring one of the most liberating paradoxes Stoic philosophy offers, that acknowledging your mortality isn't depressing. It's the pathway to actually living. The ancient Stoics understood something we've forgotten in our modern age of distraction and denial. They knew that the fear of death itself isn't the real problem. The real problem is dying without ever truly having lived. If this idea resonates with you, if you've ever felt that nagging sense that you're sleepwalking through your own life, then stay with me. Because in the next few minutes, we're going to uncover why this paradox matters so deeply and how the Stoics can teach us to live with authentic urgency starting today. Let's begin with a direct observation. You fear death. Not necessarily in a panicked way. It's usually quieter than that. It's a background hum of unease, a gravitational pull that keeps you playing it safe. But the ancient Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire at its height, reframed this fear in a way that cuts through all our modern avoidance. He wrote something that deserves to sit with you for a moment. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius wasn't speaking from philosophy alone. He was the most powerful man on earth during his lifetime, yet he chose to dedicate himself to Stoicism and regular reflection. He understood that power, wealth, and status don't change the fundamental question: are you actually living or merely existing? That distinction matters enormously. Existing is passive. It happens to you. Notice what Marcus Aurelius is really saying here. He's not minimizing death or pretending it isn't real. He's saying something more profound. There's a death worse than biological death. It's the death of potential. It's the death of your authentic self, buried under years of caution, compromise, and endless postponement. This is the death that happens while you're still breathing. You wake up at 40, 60, 80, and realize you never said what mattered to you. Never pursued what genuinely moved you. Never risked anything real. The Stoics saw this pattern everywhere in Rome. People accumulating wealth for a future they'd never enjoy. People maintaining reputations that meant nothing. People endlessly climbing ladders placed against the wrong walls. The paradox was this: in their desperate attempt to avoid death, they had already stopped living. And Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal, what we now call Meditations, was basically asking, when did we become so afraid of ending that we forgot how to begin? Now let's deepen this exploration with another Stoic giant, Seneca, who was Marcus Aurelius's intellectual predecessor by about 60 years. Seneca was a senator, a playwright, a man deeply embedded in the power structures of Rome. But he saw the contradiction in human nature so clearly that he articulated it perfectly. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. This observation is almost uncomfortably accurate when you sit with it. Think about what Seneca is describing. When it comes to risk, failure, or loss, when death or suffering might be involved, you act with complete mortal awareness. You shrink back. You protect yourself. You choose safety. But when it comes to ambition, pleasure, status, or endless acquiring, suddenly you act as though you have forever. You chase projects with the assumption you'll have time to finish them later. You consume experiences as though there's no deadline. You defer joy like it's an infinite resource waiting for you in some future version of your life. Let me give this a modern shape. Consider someone who won't start a business because they fear financial failure. They're acutely aware of mortality when it comes to risk. But the same person will spend hours on social media, watch endless television, or stay in a job that makes them miserable, assuming they have infinite tomorrows to eventually do what matters. They act mortal about the risk, immortal about the time. This is the contradiction Seneca is pointing to. It's backwards. It's inverted. I know someone, let's call her Sarah, who spent 15 years in marketing because it was stable and paid well. She told herself she'd pursue photography when things settled down, when she had enough money, when her kids were older. When she retired, at 47, she was diagnosed with early-stage cancer. Not life-ending, but life-altering. During her recovery, she finally picked up a camera seriously. She realized with a shock that she'd been acting like she had infinite time to reach her actual dreams, while simultaneously terrified of the finite time she'd spend working toward them. Seneca saw this pattern everywhere in Rome, and it's everywhere in our world today. The Stoics understood that this inversion causes profound suffering. You live fearfully, like a mortal, in the areas where courage would serve you. And you live carelessly, like an immortal, in the areas where precision and presence would transform your life. This isn't a character flaw, it's a structural mistake in how we've learned to think about our finitude. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you see it, you can begin to correct it. So we've established that most people live backwards relative to their mortality. They're timid where they should be bold, and reckless where they should be intentional. The question becomes, what do we actually do about this? How do we correct this inversion? Seneca offers us a direct prescription. The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. This isn't poetic avoidance of planning. It's strategic wisdom about where to place your actual presence. When Seneca says, live immediately, it doesn't mean act impulsively or abandon all consideration of consequences. He means this: stop treating your actual life, the one happening right now, as a rehearsal for some future performance. Stop seeing today as a stepping stone to tomorrow. Your real life is occurring in the present moment. The conversation you're having right now, the work you're doing today, the person standing in front of you. This is not practice. This is the real thing. Here's how to translate this into concrete action. First, identify one area where you're acting immortal, something you've been postponing, something you tell yourself you'll do later when conditions are better. Maybe it's a creative project. Maybe it's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's a career shift. Maybe it's simply spending intentional time with someone you love. Name it specifically, not vaguely. Write it down. This matters because vague intentions don't change behavior. Second, establish a single concrete action, not a grand gesture, but something achievable in the next 7 days that moves you toward this thing. If you want to be a photographer, don't wait until retirement. Take one photograph this week that you're genuinely proud of. If you want to mend a relationship, don't script the perfect apology. Send one honest message today. If you're considering a career change, spend 2 hours this week researching or talking to someone in that field. Small, real, immediate. Third, whenever fear arises, and it will, remember the Stoic distinction between what you control and what you don't. You control your actions and your effort. You don't control outcomes or timelines or other people's responses. The Stoics would say, your job is to do the thing well. Whether it succeeds by your timeline is actually irrelevant to your responsibility. This removes the paralyzing burden of guarantees. You don't need permission. You don't need certainty. You just need to act. Let me make this even more specific with a daily practice. Each morning, before anything else, pause for 30 seconds. Ask yourself, what would I do today if I genuinely understood this was potentially my last year alive? Not in a morbid way, but with clarity. What shifts? Suddenly, answering difficult emails feels less urgent. Pursuing hollow status feels silly. Being present with people who matter feels essential. This isn't about recklessness. It's about clarity. Let that clarity guide your choices for the day. The Stoic practice isn't about constant intensity or dramatic life changes. It's about reorienting your awareness. Most of us have inverted the scale of what matters. We treat temporary things as permanent and permanent things as temporary. We protect ourselves from the temporary, failure, loss, embarrassment, while wasting the permanent, our actual time and presence. The Stoics are simply inviting you to flip this. Treat your time as the precious, irreplaceable resource it is. Treat your fears as informative but not decisive. The Stoics spent centuries exploring mortality, not to be morbid, but to be awake. They understood that the awareness of death, properly digested, is the most clarifying force available to us. It cuts through pretense. It burns away the trivial. It aligns your actions with what you actually value. And it transforms the way you move through each day. You stop living like you'll never die. You start living like you actually matter, because you do, and your time is real. If this resonated with you, if you felt something shift while listening, I want to invite you to subscribe. Each week, we explore these timeless principles and translate them into modern practice. Because Stoicism isn't ancient history. It's a living philosophy for anyone who wants to stop sleepwalking and actually step into their own life. The future is uncertain. That's exactly why today matters so much.